Well, first of all, everybody, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Uh, I'm Beth Toner. I'm a second career registered nurse. I'm also a senior communications officer at the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. For those of you who don't know the foundation, I think most of you do, but we're the largest foundation focused on health and healthcare. And really, pretty much since our founding, we've been committed to supporting nurses and the nursing professions. The foundation believes that nurses play an essential role in ensuring everyone gets the opportunity to be as healthy as possible, which is why we've been so proud to support Shift, the podcast and website for nurses by nurses, and the reason we're all here today, the new Shift documentary, Who Cares? A Nurse's Fight for Equity. This film highlights the amazing work that Whitney Fear and two of our other panelists today do in Fargo, North Dakota to fight for health and justice. I'm so excited to be premiering the film for you all today. And I'm so excited for you to meet Whitney, if you haven't already, when she joins us in a bit. Also, I just need to have a little fangirl moment. I'm excited to be with each of you. I've watched you on social media. I've read about you. I've learned about you. It's surreal and energizing to be with you in the same virtual room. Whitney said something yesterday when we met with her that somebody had told her she would be doing this 10 years ago. She wouldn't have believed it. And I will tell you that 12 years ago, I was in my final clinical rotation. And if somebody had told me that I would be here today, getting to talk to some of the coolest nurses and healthcare workers on the face of the planet, I wouldn't have believed it. So I'm really happy to be here with you. As I said, Whitney's going to join us at the top of the hour. But in the meantime, without further ado, let's enjoy this premiere of Who Cares?
If you own a pair of Crocs, even though you know they're super ugly, you might be a nurse. If you've ever felt like Neo in the Matrix, like dodging shit that somebody is like throwing at you, maybe that's just psych, but if you've ever had your ass kicked by an elderly woman, you know, the closest I've gotten assaulted by patients multiple times. You know, the closest I've ever gotten to having my lights knocked out was a 10-year-old boy and like a 90-year-old woman. If you have unhealthy coping mechanisms, such as humor regarding significant occupational trauma, you might be a nurse. If you've ever had to accept that a physician is not going to say these words, "You were right," or something like that. This is research, I'm a nurse. I don't think she's ever given herself enough credit for the impact that she makes on other people.
You like her?
Yeah, she's tolerable.
We're really grateful for Whitney and her education and what she brings to the Native community.
I always say it's the essence of Whitney. You have to just understand how really good she is and how she gets it.
She is going to have vulnerable conversations with people in a way that makes them feel like they're cared for.
She's got a real potty mouth. I do have a real
She has a mouth like a sailor.
It's probably worse than that.
It inspires me to talk like a sailor as well.
We can get it all out of our system. I'm Whitney Fear. I'm a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner at Family Healthcare. Family Healthcare is a federally qualified community health center. We do quite a different approach at family health care than a lot of providers are doing. People's emotional health stuff is taken care of, their physical health gets better too. We're unique in the way that we're working on both. I'm Lakota and grew up on the Pine Ridge Reservation. I see patients across the lifespan, kids through geriatrics, for treatment of mental health conditions and substance use disorders. It's a job I wasn't expecting to do. And I think it probably does have a lot to do with people not giving up on me. The reservation is super rural. I was pretty miserable. I drank too much and I was a jerk, and I had dug myself such a deep hole that I'm supposed to be starting my junior year of high school, but I have a 0.5 GPA. I didn't have a chance in hell of graduating on time, but I had a great guidance counselor, and he's like, I've seen how you perform on standardized testing, and it's at a level that's significantly higher than what you're doing in school. He literally asked me why, if I was so smart, I acted so damn stupid. It was because I saw my parents work so hard their whole lives and not really ever getting to a point where they didn't have to work so hard. I saw a lot of death on the reservation. People die really young. I wondered why there was no representation from the Indigenous community.
This is the best exhibition we've had in a long time. We were working on the master plan for how to expand the museum, and we had brought in Native American community members into that meeting. And we had posed the question, what does the community need and what can we do? And you had said something specifically about a space for mental health and a space for community members to go to be safe. And to the museum's credit, they were on board with it, and we did what we could to make this happen as fast as possible. So that was really back to something that you had advocated for at that time.
I love it. I think it's great. It's a huge opportunity for sure. It's nice to just appreciate simple things. A big concept in Lakota culture is to be respectful of everything, all living things. All these things are living, which is something we know is important for approaching patients. Actually asking people how they want their care and what they think is possible, because that is communicative of respect rather than compliance. In my culture, Indigenous people in general, it's disrespectful to make prolonged eye contact with people. That's another thing that can get misconstrued in psychiatric interviews. I've seen a lot of documentation poor eye contact. It's not poor, it's culturally appropriate. I think one of the best things that nurses could do for that would be to go back to the basics. I'm so surprised at how many nurses have never even read Florence Nightingale's book, Notes on Nursing. It's really just super basic stuff. There's a whole chapter on preserving people's dignity. not expecting people to be nice to you whenever they feel like crap. She talked a lot about knowing the population that you're working with and what their specific needs are, because they can vary from area to area. So this guy I met, he's walking to work super early in the morning, and he said that he saw what in American culture, like called Bigfoot, Yeti, whatever, Lakota spiritual beliefs. So this guy is Lakota. I believe it's like a kindred ancestral spirit that has the ability to move between planes of existence, and if they reveal themselves to you, it's a blessing. It means that they feel you're a safe person with a compassionate and generous heart. He felt like honored. He said he told his psychiatrist about this when he put him on Risperdal, which is a pretty heavy antipsychotic. It's especially disturbing to hear as an IHS provider, is if you're that's your whole job is working with Native people every day, then you gotta try to learn about people and their beliefs. One time I was talking to somebody about their diabetes, and they were not overweight at all. They were not eating very frequently. So it didn't make a lot of sense why their numbers were just going up. Come to find out, the guy didn't have any skillets or pots and pans. Everything he was eating was coming from the microwave, which is a lot of carbs and starch. So I got the guy referral to an agency that bought him cookware, and then his diabetes numbers were amazing a couple months later. I could see how easily in that same position a lot of other providers would have chose to really chastise that guy about that. Don't you know this is a serious disease? You're gonna, people have limb amputations. And that just makes people feel like garbage about themselves, not helpful. When it comes to working with people in poverty, we have this you'll get what you get kind of attitude, and I don't think that's okay. The problem there is feeling justified in determining whether somebody is deserving of health care or not, which is a dangerous road to go down. Yeah, I did wear scrubs for a while at first.
When she first started working here, she wore nurse scrubs all the time. And all of a sudden, there's that one day I come walking, look at the window, and there's oh Christ, a new fucking homeless bitch on the street. Sure, I'm like, oh my God, that's Whitney.
You never told me that.
Yes, I did.
No, you didn't.
Yes,
I thought you were talking about the time you asked me. Damon was one of the first patients I started working with when I started working in homeless health.
December 27th, 2004 was the first day I came up to Fargo.
Where were you before?
St. Cloud. This is weird. Okay, maybe I might be a little too high.
Legally, though.
Hey, yeah. Legitimate and fucking legal. I can actually see where it helps my anxiety, depression. Actually helps me fight my alcoholism.
I said it's whatever you feel like is good and fine or whatever. Up here is a liquor store that pretty much everybody used to go to called Steve's Package. It's not open anymore, but.
This is one of the bad spots. They still got the cameras up.
Dude, it looks like somebody tried to punch their way in the belly.
Oh my God. I'm one of those weirdos that actually liked being homeless because I didn't have to worry about, I didn't have no responsibilities. I didn't have to care about nothing. It was an adventure.
Adventurous time that might be to a 15-year-old, there's like a lot of scary aspects to that. Places them at a higher risk for things like new, unique experiences, meaning like abused by more than one person. It reinforces brain development that is not what we would see in a typical child, like rational thinking, fight or flight stuff, being like hypervigilant, less ability to conduct like futuristic thinking. So as an adult, they just can't deal, and then they lose their job, and then they lose their housing. People who have developed such complex responses that it looks to a lot of clinicians more like something like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, and then that can result in people being treated with the wrong medications. Adverse childhood experiences definitely matter in all aspects of care. It was a landmark study where the conclusion was that there was a dose-mediated response between adverse childhood experiences and the development of chronic health problems. And we know that the higher your number goes, as far as ACEs goes, the more likely you are to not only have the disease, but have complications and probably die younger. That study was done well over 20 years ago now, and we've done essentially nothing with it. It definitely wasn't something I learned about in nursing school. It's nice right here. The river's muddy as shit, though.
Yeah, but this is so weird. It's like, where's the bottle at? Give me a shot.
How long were you homeless?
God, let's see, since I was like 15 to 47. From about 15 to 47. I've barely been housed now 5 years. My life is kind of messed up, has been messed up. Well, but last 5 years I've been trying to get it back together, and it's been working pretty good, you think?
Yeah,
From when you first met me?
yeah. I think some things have went pretty good.
What were you like when you first met you?
Oh, fuck, I was drinking all the time. I didn't have a care, it was more or less like make enough for breakfast the next morning and be drinking all the time, but
Damon can be a hard person to get to know. That's not totally unusual with the homeless population. A lot of people have had pretty awful experiences with like a variety of professionals, and they don't honestly like have very many reasons to trust people. So this guy got a cut on his hand and it looked like shit. And I told him to go to the ER because he didn't have a doctor that day. He went down there and the nurse like right away was like, "We're not giving you any pain pills, so might as well not come in here," or whatever.
lady, I already fucking drank a bottle, so what pain that's gonna do for me anyways?
Didn't you tell her
right
I'm
now?
not even really in any pain or something like that? He said,
Yeah,
I already
I-
took my meds.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I already took my meds, man. Fuck, I drank a bottle.
That irritated him so much he just left, and then we got him talked into going back down there. I called to make sure that things didn't go that way again.
Then I had a red line going down here, and that doctor said you could have died or had it amputated. And I was like, oh shit.
It makes people think like, why like even bother then? If like people aren't gonna listen, they're just gonna make an assumption about something. I work from a trauma-informed care approach, and when you work from that, you don't see people being really tense or irritable as like a personal attack. There's a woman named Heather Simonich who's done a lot of education on this in North Dakota. And how she explains it is like universal precautions for people's emotions. So like when we go to clean up blood, we just assume that the person could have a communicable disease that we could get if we touch it with bare hands. So we don't. People like Damon who have experienced things like neglect, child abuse, domestic violence, and things are such that with trauma-informed care, you could assume that's more likely an explanation for their behavior than just like they want to be like a jerk to everybody or whatever.
I don't care if you're Charles Manson sitting in front of me and you did all these terrible things, like you are now my patient for this whatever amount of time that we have. Like you have to do that. And that is like, I feel like very strongly that that is your obligation as a nurse. Such a learning experience for me was being a nurse going through infertility while working in a NICU setting where there are babies who are withdrawing from drugs because their mom used drugs. That's hard. I think it would be really easy for that to really put some real significant bias and prejudice into your heart. You have to reframe your mindset of like, the mom has a disease. There is no woman in the world who would intentionally inflict harm upon their infant. And there was a lot of grief within those moms as well. You're gonna recognize it, and then you're gonna try to overcome. Hi, Viva. How are you today? Pretty good.
There was suspicious behavior going on around our clinic, particularly by Homeless Health. And there's some indicators there that there's a problem. What kind of friend comes and is like, this woman needs to have a pap smear, she needs to be tested for hepatitis, and like, this is the first day of her last period. That's how I became acquainted with Melissa.
I've done a lot of other social work type of positions, and this is easily the most heart-wrenching when you think about the work of someone being exploited every day. Personally, I think it's worse than murder. When you can torture and exploit someone through sex or labor over and over and over again, watching them be depleted of anything, I just think that there's nothing worse. Hey, Melissa, I wanted to throw a few situations from last week on your radar. On Thursday afternoon, the healthcare facility called me concerned about a female, that she was being trafficked. Her quote-unquote uncle was there with her and was talking over her and being difficult.
Which was kind of the first red flag. He was pretty aggressive and talked over her, answered questions for her. So the provider was like, step out to the lobby.
Yeah, okay, but that's great that they had him step out of the room.
Yeah, and he ended up taking off. He did not wait in the lobby.
When we look at a victim of human trafficking, that's not what you see in social media, it's not what you see in the movies. Every victim has their own story and their own dynamic to their exploitation. Some victims we see are labor trafficked. Other victims are adults that are victimized through sex. Someone offers them a survival need, and then they have to exchange sex with someone in order to get those needs to survive. Sometimes it's youth who are trafficked by their families, and then some are groomed or trafficked just by a love interest. It's someone that just falls in love with the wrong person sometimes.
Trafficking victims could feel judged by healthcare providers. I've definitely heard things like, oh my God, how could you seriously get chlamydia like a 5th time or whatever? Traffickers love that. So if you want to support them, keep doing that because they love for victims, for the people that they're trying to exploit, they're in the midst of exploiting, to get treated like shit by other people so that they can say, see, I'm the only one who takes care of you.
We see it happen time and time again where victims finally are brave enough to come get help from a service provider and are treated so poorly that any chance of us intervening at that time is completely shattered. They are taught to be hypervigilant all the time. They need to know all the time how to read people, what's going on around them. Within seconds, they know if they want to work with you. And so if they're going to talk or disclose, medical providers have a huge opportunity to help these victims. Does she have a follow-up appointment where we could ask her if she wanted more services, or do you know if you'll see her again just at your facility or anything?
She does not. Unfortunately, they weren't even able to get to like any medical point of her appointment. But I do know what she looks like. Family Healthcare knows. They were going to put some flags in our chart as kind of some alerts. So I'm hopeful that if she shows back up, they will reach out and we can try to get her connected.
Well, thank you for being there. If you hear any updates, let me know and I will do the same.
Sounds like a plan, girl.
Okay, thanks, Jillian. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, sounds good. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
That's a pretty normal day, normal call. The work affects your life in a variety of ways that kind of sneak up on you. I was playing in a softball tournament and a lot of drinking and partying happens, right? And so we crack our first beer as a team and I'm just looking around and my first thought was, I wonder how many girls are gonna get raped here tonight. And that's my normal thought process. A lot of medical personnel suffer from that. And when we think about that after work all the time, we lose our ability to even experience emotions ourselves. And when we lose those things in our own life, how do we help people who need it most? Self-care is not bubble baths and wine. You have to have some really honest conversations with yourself and say, how am I separating myself from work? Because if I don't, I'm gonna burn out and my clients are gonna suffer.
There's no adequate way to really mentally prepare yourself for the level of responsibility if you're taking it as seriously as you should be.
When people don't have these like great experiences with healthcare providers, I often think that like they're probably getting their healthcare from a burnt out provider.
100%, yes. I think it's okay to be scared. I think it's okay to advocate for yourself if you don't feel like there's enough support. Because you see the worst, I mean the worst things that like a human being could tell another human being, and then just come home and like have to be normal.
Things that you might drag home and even subtle things can build up over time. Healthcare providers have really high rates of substance use. People develop pretty bad depression, kind of hitting them all at once. So health maintenance should include therapy. I think it is important to give people your best hope and interest in them getting better, because people really can. Should probably go get it before it gets all condensation all over.
I got the munchies.
We believe super strongly in serving as a role model for other providers in the community, that there's some different ways of approaching things. It doesn't have to be like this like black and white way of doing things that's too restrictive for people. It's not that we're better, that they're better. We're team members, and the more diversity there is with healthcare providers, the better taken care of people are going to be. I actually have a lot of optimism. I think that the younger generations have a lot more empathy for one another than past generations. They seem to be a lot more receptive to listening to one another and working together. Lakota people feel that this was foretold to us, that there would be this generation that would be more united. And I do think that we're seeing things move in that direction.
I gotta make it to a powwow tonight. I'll be singing 49 down by the riverside, looking for sugar, riding in my Indian car. Got my T-bird in the glove box, I ain't got no spare. Got a feather from an eagle, I ain't got no care. The road is empty in my bottle of desire. Daylight is breaking, the sun touches fire. I got to make another powwow tonight. I'll be singing 49 down by the riverside, looking for sugar, riding in my Indian car. We don't get old, we just get younger when we're flying down the highway, riding in our Indian cars, riding in our Indian cars, riding in our Indian cars.
Like my eyes were watery the whole time, but it was in the best way, you know? Especially with the positive components towards the end and like the hope with the younger generation of nursing. I'm excited.
Oh, I am too. I'm just, I met briefly with Whitney yesterday, so I had my fangirl moment with Whitney, just meeting her. She's smiling because I know she's more of an introvert than I am. But this is, first of all, I mean, I'm just going to say what I said before. It's so amazing to be here with you all. It's one of those moments that gives me hope for the nursing profession, because I see there are other people out there who are just psyched to do things the right way and to agitate for us to be working in systems that allow us to do things the right way, the compassionate way. So I should probably introduce you. That's I think officially my role. So I'll stop gushing over the film, but this is the first time I've seen the final cut. So it was fabulous. And I really enjoyed watching the chat, and I love the fact that we all share that little bit of dark humor. That's thumbs up to the dark humor. So real quick introductions. A lot of you know each other, but I'm going to do the formal things. So first of all, welcome Whitney. Yay, you're here. She probably doesn't need an introduction because we've all seen her, but we'll say that she is a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner in Fargo, North Dakota, and a member of the Oglala Lakota Nation. Stacy Hone, one of our favorite scenes. Again, somebody chatted that that's only humor that nurses would get. I showed that scene to my husband. He's like, why is that funny? And I showed it to my sister, the nurse. She's like, yeah, that's funny. So thank you, Stacy. She's a clinical services manager and Whitney's shift BFF at Family Healthcare in Fargo, North Dakota. Melissa Kaiser, again, we know you much better after the documentary, is a social worker and was previously the first human trafficking navigator for her region of the North Dakota Human Trafficking Task Force. Melissa trains local and national groups on person-centered, trauma-informed case management of human trafficking victims. Kim Ellis, with your sunshiny outfit that cheers up this gloomy Pennsylvania day, is a family nurse practitioner and certified diabetes care and education specialist who uses her reach across social media platforms at the Diabetes NP to provide education about chronic disease management in marginalized populations. And finally, Sarah Warren, who is also known to her 90,000 Instagram followers as She's in Scrubs, is a registered nurse, nurse advocate, and co-founder of Don't Clock Out, a mental health initiative for providers to bring attention to the support needed for healthcare workers. So before we kind of dive deep into the documentary itself, Sarah, you gave us the first thing I was going to ask. So quick reactions to the film, and Whitney, you're also included in this conversation, even though you're the subject of the film. What's your reaction? Stacy, Melissa, you too. This is the first time you're seeing it all the way through. So what's your reaction?
Well, I had goosebumps, which is always a good sign, right? But I think it encompasses so much of, like Sarah had said, kind of the powerful or positive pieces of it with the humor and the hope. But also I think it's a conversation that is long overdue about the things that aren't going well and that we're not doing or that we are avoiding, or that we continue to personalize our experiences with our clients, which we shouldn't be, right? So I think it's a conversation that needs to be had. And I just loved how it encompassed positive things as well as barriers that we need to focus on. I think it was great.
Thanks, Melissa. Kim, you went off mute.
Oh yeah, it was a journey. I think in such a small piece of time, we hit so many big things that are going on, and then even highlighted some things that I think we're not necessarily thinking about, but when it was brought up, it was like, yeah, it's like trafficking. It's a whole thing, self-care and stress. Like, I remember like being a brand new baby nurse and my externship and having to deal with my first death as a nursing student, and just like, it doesn't stop, and nobody tells us how to deal with things, and then we just have to go back to our families, and like, it just turned it right off. So it was a great documentary. I loved it.
Thanks, Kim. Yeah, I think there's so much in this film where I was like, I wish I'd known this, right? I wish we talked about this in nursing school. I wish we talked about the fact that I'd be scared, that I'd be sad. And I've said to more than one person, I think I would still be doing much more bedside care if we'd had those conversations early on. Stacey, so you go off mute.
Well, I think for me, I had a little bit different perspective because it's weird to see your environment that you're in every day into a movie. So for me, a lot of the things that were covered were just like the regular thing. Like, that's kind of like, I kept seeing in my head, well, of course, why wouldn't you, be respectful of a person's addiction as a disease and treating them like just another person and getting at their level? Like, that's the regular thing. And I guess I should be very blessed to be able to say that, because I think that there are a lot of environments. And now thinking back on previous environments that I've worked at, this isn't always the regular thing. I've been here for 7 years now. I've been out of the hospital for closer to 9 years, but I did really like Melissa's comment about when she talked about going out and to having a drink, and of course everyone else is just in the moment enjoying, and she's going through her head, what could happen to these gals that are out having a few drinks tonight. I feel like that really is like all encompassing of like my experience as a nurse during COVID. I feel like all my family and friends were able to that weren't nurses, were kind of able to be like normal, so to speak, if they weren't directly impacted by it. And I had I didn't take good care of myself, and I'm sure you can tell in that documentary, I was significantly heavier. The week that we filmed that, I was actually on a liquid diet because I was having gastric bypass the day before that, and I've lost close to 100 pounds, but a lot of that was gained just not practicing good self-care because of the pandemic. So when I look at that, I think of like the 2 years that we've had and how crazy it's been, and it brought up a lot of feelings, but I think Melissa really hit that on the head. I remember many times sitting in a room thinking about COVID, or looking around in a group of people, like how many of these people are going to get COVID now, and might not make it in a month. When you saw a big gathering of people, but so there's a lot of feelings, but it was great. Thank you.
Thanks, Stacey. Sarah, you shared some of your feelings. Do you want anything to add? And I think we should also let Whitney say how it feels to see herself. I know you've seen it before, but how does it feel to see the final cut?
I think for me, just kind of piggybacking off of what Stacey said, and my experience encompasses, the last 2 years, working with COVID patients, working on COVID dedicated units, and seeing the impacts, not only of the disease process itself, but also the layers of the inadequacies of our healthcare systems and how that impacted our ability to care for these patients who are sicker than we'd ever could have imagined. having that heavy weight on top of, having to see death over and over and over again, and seeing a patient progress to needing high levels of oxygen, to needing to be intubated, and knowing in your mind that they probably didn't make it a couple of weeks later, or knowing that if they did make it, it meant 6 months on a ventilator in an ICU, becoming malnourished, their family not being able to see them for that entire time, and having to carry that emotional aspect on top of, holding iPads inside of rooms. And one moment that I think of is like the surrealness of driving to work in the early stages of the pandemic and there being no traffic because no one else is out. Like the quietness, the stillness of that, and having to go into work and feeling like you're there to save lives. And then in return, you receive, PPE that's used for 2 weeks. In return, you receive heroes work here signs, and Zoom yoga in your email while you're literally becoming traumatized every day you clock into a shift. And not enough people are able to understand that because they haven't gone through it. And, you can't blame the general public for that. But it's hard to hold all of that in for so long. And I feel like so many of us, as the pandemic has kind of transitioned into hopefully a little bit of a better stage, now it's the time that we all have that sigh of relief, but it's also all of that pressure and all of that weight coming down on us and realizing we haven't been okay for a very long time. And I feel like Whitney, the way she spoke, the way she humanized, the patients that were involved in this documentary, and making it so that it's patient-centered, understanding that they're human beings. Like, these are people that we can relate to, that we can laugh with, we can joke about, that we can listen to their stories about their families, and we don't have to judge people based on, what they've gone through. And that us seeing them in that care setting is just such a small glimpse into their lives. We don't know their backgrounds, but we can ask that. We can try to absorb that, try to understand, and be better providers through that. And it's just an incredible film. And I'm just so glad seeing the final version of it. It was so much better than I could have even imagined. Like, it was already great. And then it's just like incredible. So I'm really proud of this, and I'm proud to be a part of it. Sorry for the long spiel.
It's okay. Whitney, before we go to a rapid fire question, which is next, because we need something to giggle about. Whitney, what's your reaction? I know it's unfair to put you on the spot, but I'm going to do it anyway.
That's okay. Yeah, so it's pretty surreal. I was sharing with you, Beth, and the rest of the team yesterday. Like, this was not ever anything that I imagined could be possible, to have this kind of platforms, and initially trying to do some, make some movement with this kind of stuff. Several years ago, I was met with just not, I don't even know if I call it resistance, just utter shutting down of things. The avenues that I was trying to pursue that, with. And so, that just how drastically things have changed, and I'm really, it really helps with that. I think with coping with the things that happened and have happened. I kind of towards the end, I'd almost forgot about towards the end, as the camera's panning down on that shelf from Kim Sieb's office, it'll because there's a picture. There's actually a couple of pictures of people in it that have passed away in the last year and a half that were really, that were very near and dear to my heart, and that they passed away from the conditions of poverty and homelessness. Is the kind of the scoop with that, but. Yeah, it's kind of whenever that stuff though, whenever those twinges come up, but I know things are moving in a good direction, and in such an optimistic direction, then that's really okay, but things are gonna be getting better, and people don't have to aren't gonna have to live this way and just kind of accept it anymore. And I think, I would add that to kind of Stacy's point of, I do feel really fortunate to work somewhere that just has that the culture of just accepting people how they are and all of that, because I'll tell you, one of the saddest things that I've heard way too many times over the years is these like profound like thank yous from people, and like what they were thinking, like, you know, like, thank you for not like being mean to me, and like and that is like, well, you're welcome, but that really I don't remember if you said that this was like PG-13 or it could be like R or NC. So I like really, you know, makes me upset to, you know that people's standards for how they should be treated by healthcare providers would be such that, you know, like simply not being like cast aside as like this gigantic thing that somebody does for them. Is just like, it's our jobs, we're getting paid for it. So but yeah, it's, like I said, it's very surreal. But you know, I was really, when the team approached me about making this, I was really specific. You know, I'm like, I grew up on a reservation that's commonly targeted for lots of projects, and nothing ever gets done with them, because what it is it's, you know, and this is like a technical term, so it's not cussing, but it's poverty pornography. It's like to make people feel a little better, that they at least like captured some images or some stories of how awful people have it, but like it's not really used for anything other than the benefit of the filmmaker or whatever. And I was like, I don't want to have that happen. Like, these are real human beings. Like, Damon is a real person. I'm a real person. If I'm going to be sharing this raw stuff about myself, I'm not going to share it to like make somebody feel better about themselves. Like, I want something good to come of it. So, you know, I think like from that, like, word go with Apple, the team was 150% like respectful and amazing the whole time. And like, I love that with the way that things turned out, because I feel like it's not that at all. And it's, yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Whitney. And I actually used those exact terms with the team when we talked about this. I'm like, we aren't going to make poverty porn. We don't need more. And I think part of where I'd like to land our discussion today too, is just talking about, you know, for those who are watching this, whether you're a nursing student or you're nursing academic, you know, let's take these lessons. So we're going to get to some of those questions in a minute, but we're going to have a moment of fun. So there's a shift tradition for those of you who have interacted with shift. There's a shift tradition of the rapid fire question. So today's rapid fire question, we actually had one yet. Whitney and I settled on one yesterday, and I switched it up on her afterward. So you're having a procedure tomorrow. You can decide what procedure it is. You have to be NPO after midnight. Melissa, you know what NPO is. I'm sure social workers, it means you can't eat or drink anything after midnight. So you have to be NPO after midnight. What do you eat at 11:55 p.m.? Kim, you're smiling. Go.
That's easy. Chili fries. Load them up for me.
Oh, amen. Oh,
all the grease.
Oh, that wasn't on my list, but okay. Stacy.
Oh Lord, I just had gastric bypass, so I'm trying to decide what food is even tolerable at this point. But probably something sweet like a cookie.
Okay.
Get me in trouble.
Whitney.
Yeah, probably pizza. I love pizza. You eat pizza like seriously anytime.
Oh, yeah, me too. That's why I run. Melissa.
Ice cream all the way. For one, it's comforting, right? I'm about to get a procedure and I don't like needles, so I can cry into my bowl of ice cream. And secondly, I have to eat sugar every single day. So fortunately, it would be ice cream.
Sarah.
Quarter pounder with cheese from McDonald's.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I actually agree with all of it. I guess I have to pick something too, don't I? You're going to laugh at me. Mashed potatoes with lots of butter and salt and pepper. I really like, I've never met a carb I didn't like, so. Okay, let's get into the real discussion. Thank you for humoring me. So first question. A big theme in the film is the importance of centering care around each person's unique and specific needs and culture and background. So let's talk about that. How is something like providing pots and pans to someone with diabetes health justice?
Well, I think it's just helping to level the playing field. I mean, if you have someone who's has diabetes that is not experiencing things like food insecurity or housing struggles or poverty, they're going to have a much better chance if they follow their treatment plan of getting better. If you have the same person with the same condition, but they are having problems with access to healthy food or the ability to cook their food in a healthy way, they're just already going to be at a disadvantage, I guess. So if you're able to do something like that, if you have the resources to, it kind of helps level the playing field, I guess, or helps, get the person who has a disadvantage, just bring it up a notch so that they're a little bit closer to the person that, it doesn't struggle with the same sorts of challenges. At least that's my thought.
Yes, when I hear this, it opens a can of worms for me because like I do home visits, and so that's like probably 75% of my job is addressing SDOH, social determinants of health. And like people are in food deserts out here, and with diabetes, it swings both ways because if you don't have, good food or know how to cook it, where do you go? You go to the corner store. Well, what's in the corner store? Nothing fresh. And so you have lots of sodium, lots of packaged food. There you go with your hyperglycemia, but then it can swing to hypo because if people don't have enough, if they don't know how to cook it, and then they're on insulin that they can't afford, but they're on insulin, and so it's like, it just opens up like, I've been in that situation where I've been like, you know what, I'll drive 20 minutes to a grocery store for you. What do you need? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, this is, it's a world of difference for them.
Well, and I think, do you even have a refrigerator to keep the insulin in? Do you understand the instructions for using the pen or drawing up the insulin? Yeah. Sarah, I saw you go off mute, and Melissa, I see you want to jump in too. So,
well, I think my part, Beth, is, off of what you're saying. I think what people miss too, and we talk about culture, and we all need training on culture and what that means. Culture, I think people just say, oh, it's different races, right? Or people come from different places. Culture is also the things like, how did you grow up? You don't have a refrigerator. You might only have a 6th grade education. So how would you know how to read or understand these things? Culture is not just race and where you come from. It's how they grew up in their family. And we have to understand that that's a part of what we need to learn about culture is everyone is different. So when we talk about health justice and success for people, how are they identifying that? When we are person-centered, what do they say justice is? What do they feel has been successful for them? And how are we as providers getting creative to help them get there? They might not know how to get there. That's part of our jobs, I think. And so when we understand culture and say, okay, how can I think outside the lines here? How can I take 3 extra minutes today to help someone think outside the box and reach a goal, A, that will help them trust me more, and B, will provide them a feeling of success and resiliency and strength and hope, right? That's our job. And I think sometimes it's literally just an extra few minutes to take and to make sure we have proper education.
And I think it's removing the traditional shame and blame lens that we kind of gravitate towards, not only in nursing, but in healthcare in general. And with removing that shame, you're opening up to these patients. These patients are opening up to you. You ask them these vulnerable questions without a lens of judgment. And, realize that if you provide them with the access to the tools that they need, they will try their best to, promote their own health. if they don't have those tools, and if we don't address the lack of those tools, how can we expect anyone to be able to take control and autonomy over their own health?
I mean, I think too, like if someone doesn't feel cared for and respected, how do they care for themselves, right? If we are sending signals that we don't care for you, we don't respect you, we don't care enough about you to find out what's important to you, find out what has shaped who you are, then what is the message we're sending? So I'd like to talk about, because we've touched on it a little bit, and Whitney, I'd love to, Whitley, Melissa, and Stacy, you all, I know some of you are meeting for the first time, but you've all worked in various settings in the same community. I'd love to hear how you all got to the point, like, when did you say, okay, we're going to do things differently? Did you always do things this way? I mean, I know Stacy and Whitney, you worked in the NICU, but also, so just the general question to the group, what do we need to do to change up nursing education? Because what we saw in the movie today, there are pieces of this that you think, yes, as a compassionate human being, I would want to do that, I hope that would be my reaction. And we talk, I think, in some general respects in school. I'm a community college grad, so we didn't get a ton of social determinants of health, right? We didn't have time for that. And yet we talked about, gave a nod to the importance of patient-centered care. And yet I feel like the things that you all focus on in the movie are so, like, I just think it's the key to transforming the system and making patient care better. So how do we need to change up nursing education? If you all could wave, or Melissa, social worker education, healthcare professions in general, like if you all could wave a magic wand, what would you do? And I'm going to start with Whitney. If you could change nursing education, like I gave you a magic wand and you could change even just one thing, what would it be?
I would change I guess I would I would want to refocus things like back to some of the basics, the way, when nursing first began as a profession, it was not, the level of like elitist kind of profession as it is now. There was like a big focus on really enmeshing yourself in the community that you were working in, so you could truly Flo Nightingale wasn't perfect, right? But like she abandoned a life of wealth to be a nurse. She was set up to be a super wealthy woman, but she never married, so she didn't inherit any of it. So and so that was like unheard of at that time period in the world, right? For a woman to completely abandon an inheritance, essentially to do, this, some kind of work, but that because that understanding, and if you read like notes on nursing, I talk about a little bit in the film, like there's just some really basic things in there. Like if somebody is sick, don't expect them to be in a good mood. And I know I saw a comment when we were watching the film that said like more training for SANE nurses, like or like opening that up for trafficking stuff, but like also like I've heard that just kind of like popped in my head. I'm like, I've heard SANE nurses literally in a training I was doing with another colleague in human trafficking, Annie Lefiner Ritchie. She and I did a training together for SANE nurses, and the level we had to explain to these nurses that they could not refuse to take care of human trafficking victims that had recently been sexually assaulted because they were being rude to them was beyond my comprehension. That's mind-boggling. It's like, that was like this is basic nursing stuff, you guys. What are you talking? You can't. Yeah, they're not going to be in a good mood. They just got raped. Like, it's just gonna be the kind of, they're not gonna, it's like not a vibe, that is like really very friendly. Maybe you should just, I kind of check your reaction to that. But I guess I would just say like get back to basics a little bit and focus. Like all the EBP and all that, like in the world, if you don't have the compassion there, like it really like the outcomes, right? We know that like there's these And I talked to Beth and these guys a little bit yesterday about like magnet status. Like we have lots of magnet status facilities in the United States. We still have some of the worst health outcomes in the entire world.
Yeah. Well, and there's been research done that shows that placebo studies that have showed that you can give a patient a placebo and tell them you're giving them a placebo, but if you provide them compassionate care, their symptoms get better, right, to some extent, right? Which tells you that compassion is a tool. It should be the first tool in our toolbox. Who else? What would you do to change healthcare profession education? Melissa, I saw you go off mute.
Yeah, I was going to piggyback a little off of Whitney. I think with some of the basics, it's even about like safety, you know, do you feel safe at home? Well, if their offender is sitting next to them, right? Or are we typing on our computer and they're over here? Are we having a conversation with them? I think understanding that if you ask for someone's name and address in a lobby full of people, or they're sitting in an ER where there are windows all around. We had a victim once that on her like app, you know, her medical app on her phone, after she left the appointment, her offender was in the parking lot and grabbed her phone to make sure the doctor's notes didn't include information on these stitches she just got put in her head and that they were from him. And so he was making sure she didn't disclose that. So it's understanding all of these barriers to them getting help. And instead of asking, why didn't they leave? Why didn't they tell me they were unsafe? Focusing more on them again as helping them and not wondering the why, but just doing our jobs, you know. So it does sound kind of obvious, but it's missed a lot, I'm finding. And I think along with, in my perfect world, some of this training they would have to do in order to reach like their CEUs, your continuing ed. They would have to have certain hours in human trafficking, in ethics, in being person-centered and trauma-informed in culture, and secondary trauma. I think we should be talking about that on an ongoing basis for onboarding for new nurses. It should be not just you get free tacos on Tuesdays and you can wear jeans in the clinic on Friday, but do you have supervision? Are you supported when you take work off? And lastly, I think it would be so beneficial. Part of what I did a lot in North Dakota was cross-discipline and multidisciplinary team training. If I understand my teammates and the disciplines that work alongside me, like law enforcement, social workers, homeless shelters, if I knew those people and if I respected them and what they did, and also knew that our jobs and goals are sometimes differently, working together for the client, not taking our personal crap and saying, I'm mad at so-and-so, or I don't like that police department, or I don't want to work with them. This is not about you, right? And so I get really heated about that. And just, we need to cross-discipline train to understand each other, but also take time, like Whitney said, to get to know our community partners and have a personal relationship there so our clients get the absolute best care.
Yeah, for sure.
This is Stacy. This is probably like the most simplistic thing that it's probably way off from everybody else, but it's not for me, you know. Oh, shout out to, I see that I got some ADN nurses on there. I feel like that's a oftentimes unrepresented community college. Woo!
Wouldn't be a nurse without it. Wouldn't be a nurse without it.
I always joke around that I'm a B student from the community college. Like I am not a fancy girl. I am just plain old Stacy. But you know, I feel like there's been this little bit of a shift since I became a nurse back in the day. When I started off my career, I went to a 4-year college. I started there. It's actually Whitney and I went there at the same time, and met each other, I think, briefly in passing. But you know, I've never been an A student. I've never been an A student. I'm pretty sure, I'm like 99.9% sure, and I think Whitney would agree that I have some untreated ADHD. I have a hard time sitting and listening. I've never really been, I'm great at math, not good at algebra. I've always had a real hard time finding the X if I didn't have a real good reason to find the X, but I can do a dose calculation backwards, frontwards, to the side, I can train any BSN prepared straight A student to do dosage calculations in the NICU. I just am not an academic. I'm just not. I'm smart. I'm not an academic. And I went to a community college. I worked hard. I worked my butt off for that semester, taking pre-college algebra, chemistry, you name it, I did it at a fairly good sized university. And I got to my first semester and I was told, good, now you need to retake all those classes until you get an A. Because I had Bs. And at that point in time, they wanted straight A 4.0, or they weren't even going to look at you. Now, that being said, I had been a CNA for 4 years at this point because I started that when I was 16. So I got really discouraged and I transferred to a community college. I got accepted right away. And you know, there was some merit given to the fact that I had been a CNA for 4 years. And I, you know, I had to get home health aide certified, all those things. I wouldn't say by any means I came from a diverse background, but I definitely didn't come from, I've worked since I was 14. You know, I worked for the things that I had. I bought my own clothes. You know, I didn't always have the best of everything. And I certainly had to work all the way through school too. You know, at least 20 hours a week, all the way through college. You know, got out, graduated with my ADN when I was 21 years old, on the floor, 22 years old, supervising 3 CNAs, having 25 patients all to myself, and I'm the charge nurse. I learned in the real world, and I think as time is going on, it's actually getting harder to get into school. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I know that the TEAS exam seems like things are very, very standardized. The big joke that I always make around here is, I feel like with all these entrance exams, and I can't change that. I can't change it, but I feel like some credit should be given to the fact of, my joke always is if you can take 3 CNAs and throw them on a shift of patients with dementia and Alzheimer's on a holiday like Christmas Eve and leave them there overnight for 12 hours, whoever is there standing at the end and their patients are well cared for, clean, their blood sugars, if they have diabetes, are not like 500, and everyone is safe and tucked in and the charting is done, I feel like you should just be able to get to go. Maybe your grammar isn't perfect. Maybe you didn't get a 4.0 in your classes. Maybe you can't. Maybe you didn't make it through calculus. And I think there also has to be a lot of recognition that there's a lot of different ways to be a nurse. I feel like when I graduated, it was very BSN centered, and there was a lot of jobs I wasn't applicable for, and I mean, I just wouldn't have even qualified to apply. So I think diversifying the workforce would really help with a lot of these things, because I think some of my best nurses that fare well in this environment, and I'm very much more, I do patient care, but I'm more of a manager. I mean, I'm more of that. But some of the best nurses I have, they have good life experience. They have good culturally diverse backgrounds. They're really good with patients who have substance use disorders, because guess what? Their mom and dad had a substance use disorder.
Yeah, that's right.
And it took them a long time to get through their CNA, their LPN, their RN. You know, that I think is more support for those students. And then to simplify it, if you're going to a community college, just the education that people need, I feel like, yeah, you can take a psychology class, you can learn about every health system in the body, but I mean, just got to teach that, like, people are not a sum of all their parts. I mean, it's a person that you're treating. And I always feel like I'm by no means no expert in anything. I don't even know how I made it on a documentary, to tell you the truth. I'm just plain old B student Stacy. But like, once you can look at things from not having to pick apart human behavior and trying to analyze why people are doing things, and just accept that people think and do things differently than you do, and people have a lot of life experience that goes into how they do things. Once you can kind of quit going like, oh, I wonder why this patient is late all the time. Oh, I wonder why this patient didn't just take their medication. Oh, this patient, they've been in here 1,000 times, or they've been to treatment 1,000,000 times. Like, oh, why can't they get it together? And just accept that they have a lot of factors in their life. They are a human, and just meet them where they're at, and trying to dissect all the behavior and figure out why, but also look at things from a trauma standpoint. I feel like that would be probably the easiest thing. It's a 5-minute conversation in nursing school. Sorry, I always talk too much, but
No, there's a
my
reason.
feeling. I have a lot of feelings.
I asked the question because I wanted to know the answer. And before, because I want to make sure that Kim and Sarah can weigh in, but I want to say shout out to CNAs because I was a second career nurse. I was in my early 40s when I started nursing school, right? You know who I turned to? Everyone in my class had been a CNA. Because first of all, they could read the doctor's handwriting. So let's start there, right? Like, and I was terrified. I was so terrified, right? 3 kids at that point, but I was terrified I was going to break a patient, and it was CNAs who taught me, yeah, this person with a tube needs to be handled carefully, but if you're scared of it, you got to lay your hands on the person and think about them as a person, right? So shout out to the CNAs. Kim, how about you? What would you do? What magic wand would you wave?
This is, I was like, just one? Well, but first thing would be for real cultural sensitivity training, like really.
Not box checking.
Yeah, not box checking, not just one little section of a class. Because, and to both of you all's points, it's like, I would think we need to really just abolish this ivory tower. I never like that. When you're taking a standardized test, like what would the test makers want you to say? It's like, but then we get out into the real world and we have to take care of real people, but you want me to take a test that's not really talking about what the situation would be. You know what I'm saying? And part of it, I hate to say it, but like, when I took my NCLEX versus when I took my diabetes educator exam, which any health professional can take, so it's very broad, it was all the questions, even if you didn't know the answer, if it was leaning towards patient-centered, that probably was the right question. But that wasn't the case for the nursing exam. It was just like, what's in the book? You know what I'm saying? What's the technical term? And at this point, I've been a nurse for a bit. I've been almost 15 years, NP for a decade. And when I see kind of younger nurses, it's almost like it's all about the book. It's just all about the book. There's no feeling, there's no heart, there's no gut. Like, what is your gut telling you? What do you see in front of you? And I think that's a big thing as well. And to your point, Whitney, as well, about this elitism in nursing, like, I don't see any other health professions with so many categories. We have so many categories, and then we want people to take us seriously. Well, we confuse ourselves. Like, I mean, it's like CNA, ADN, BSN. I mean, it's like, and then we want to step towards other professions as disrespect. And it's like, we are elite with each other. So then can we really be surprised when other people want to keep us out the party? You know what I'm saying? And so, I, and because I've been a nurse for a while, I came through it during the time where you had to have some work experience to even apply. That was part of the requirement.
Yeah.
Like, you had to come in with like 18 months of like before you even apply. And so it's like, at this point in time, I don't have my DNP personally. No shade to anybody who has. I think that's great if that's your goal. But, I think it's been to the point now, it's like, that's the only path. But you're not really talking about what is it that you're called to do. You know what I'm saying? Because your DNP may not call you to do what you want to do. You know what I'm saying? You may need another certification, or you may need just some extra training in something, or just some mentorship. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so I think this elitism, I don't know, it kind of rubs me the wrong way, because I don't feel like the best quality is necessarily out there. Someone who probably has been a nurse for 6 months, and nothing wrong with that, because you can be a very smart, astute person. But, some of my best lessons came from people who could flip it many different ways for me. That's how I learned, because I remember them saying normal is many things. Normal is many things for everybody. And so if you just look at the textbook, you may miss a normal or an abnormal. So yeah, those were, I guess if I could, that's more than one. That's my one 3 times.
It's kind of a big bundle of one.
Mm-hmm.
So Sarah, I'm conscious of time. You get the last word on the magic wand waving, and then I'll wrap us up. I might do another rapid fire question, so just FYI. But Sarah.
Yeah, I think
Bring us home.
and Whitney, I think the elitism, the gatekeeping in our profession is what's truly keeping us from providing the best care we possibly can. And the, like Kim said, it's just the elitism that impacts one another, like having to, talk to an LPN who could run circles around you because they have 15 years of experience that they need to get their BSN RN in order to get a role in an acute care setting. And then when COVID hits, when you have no nurses left, you're begging for LPNs to come back. How do we explain that? It's a slap in the face. And for me, I'm an ADN prepared nurse. My mother actually came from the Dominican Republic, and, she spoke only Spanish, learned English here in the United States, went to school in New Jersey, got all her prerequisites, and she saw a poster that said, I want to be a nurse, or do you want to be a nurse? I'm sorry, in the bathroom. And she was a lab tech at the time, and that inspired her to go into nursing. But in New Jersey, the waiting list to get into nursing school in 2000, early on when I was very young, the waiting list was 2 years. So they moved to Florida, and my mom finally started to go into her dream. And she was told that the prerequisites that she took in New Jersey weren't going to apply to the programs in the area that I live. And so she was devastated because she did all the work to get into that program. And the only program that she could get into was a community college, and the same one that I went to, which is now a state college. And she has now 15 years of nursing experience in the NICU, and she's an ADN prepared nurse. So what is she going through now? This push to magnet status in this facility she's worked through for 15 years. And she's seen people with 2 years experience get promoted and get these opportunities that she's asked for but has never been given because of not having that BSN degree. And it's so frustrating because she is such a wealth of knowledge. And the only way she would have been able to get into the nursing field was through that ADN program, through that community college. And if we continue to eliminate that access, we're not going to have a diverse nursing workforce. That's just reality.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Sarah. That was a great way to bring us home. Okay, rapid fire question. You're allowed a one-word answer. What's one thing they can't teach in nursing school or, Melissa, healthcare profession school? Melissa, one word. One thing they can't teach that you need to bring to the profession.
Patience for yourself and for the client.
Stacy.
I'm not a one-word person, but
right. Two
but
words.
Yes, I would also say patience or ability to be personable.
Kim.
Relatable.
I like that. Kim.
Manners. Please attention takes you a long way.
Amen. Amen. Sarah.
Compassion. It doesn't come with the territory. You have to develop it over time.
I'll echo compassion. I think you have to bring that with you. And Whitney, you get the last word on the thing they can't teach us in nursing school.
Humility.
Oh, yeah. Shout out to humility. Amen. Amen. So this has just been pretty much the highlight of my week, my month, maybe COVID. So first of all, thank you to all of you for your time, your valuable time. Time is one of the most valuable assets, even though it seems to have lost its meaning over the last 2 years. I appreciate what each and every one of you do for the profession, especially for those you care for. You make me, I hate the word inspired, but inspired to be a better me, a better nurse. I'm going to bring these conversations with me when I volunteer at the clinic. So thank you. A charge to the nurses out there watching this. How do you bring compassion to your work? How do you center your patients? I think nurses and the folks we work with, social workers like Melissa, we are the essence of getting justice for those we serve, and we can play an essential role in that. So how are we going to do that? And then finally, for those of you who aren't nurses, but who love a nurse, who know a nurse, who want to see everyone in our nation be healthy, think about the resources that the nurses around you need, the support they need to do their jobs well and to make our healthcare system work for everybody, not just a few. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.